Lots going on in the world, and we'll be talking about that. I know that the Japanese prime minister apparently was upset at some of the stuff that Trump was doing, and I know that the Irish prime minister was upset yesterday as well. Apparently, there was something about gift of shamrocks and some comments that Trump made about Ireland, and of course, he's talking about making Venezuela the 51st state and a number of other things as well. So I've got Rick Rosner with me. We'll see if other folks join us as well, and hear what a number of folks have to say about all of these amazing stories and what's going on in that space.
There's a ton of stuff going on in the serious world and in the world of nonsense. But if you can go on social media and look for the video of the Japanese, somebody did a zoom in on the Japanese prime minister's face as Trump was saying stupid shit and pretty much insulting her. And she looks like somebody on a prank show.
Wow.
Because like she's trying not to laugh. And she's also trying not to like explode in anger. And she's just sitting there with this weird, like you're in church and somebody just farted and you don't want to like crack up and get yelled at by your mom. Her face is doing that.
Well, check out what he did with the average person as well. I know that I had seen something about that yesterday, but I forgot what happened. I just know that he had done some other crazy stuff with that. And then you were telling me about a TV show. And of course, a lot of people are watching March Madness. So I did see High Point, which is a small school here in North Carolina, put off an upset of Wisconsin.
What were they seeded?
No, they were 13. So they beat a 4 and everything like that.
Nice. That's a nice thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it screws up everybody's bracket.
Oh, yeah, the brackets are totally screwed up by now because that was definitely not something that people saw in their brackets, I don't think. And Siena almost knocked off number 1 Duke, but it looks like Duke's going to pull this one off and everything like that. But that would have really upset people's brackets because I think last year was a very chalky bracket. I think all the number 1 seeds made it through and everything like that. But this year, who knows? Maybe there'll be some different stuff going on, and we might see some 2s or some 3s or some other numbers.
All right, we need that. I mean, we need the distraction from all the real crap that's going on. All right, but The Bachelor, the ABC for, 20 years has had a show called The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. And where, one person, hot, charming person is surrounded by 30 suitors and they get eliminated week by week. Anyway, they've been doing everybody knows this freaking show. Yeah. They just had to cancel an entire show that I'm sure was already, at least half filmed, right? Mm-hmm. They just canceled the whole season because The Bachelorette, the star of the show, her ex-boyfriend just put up video of her engaging in domestic abuse.
Oh, wow.
Throwing a chair at him and missing him and hitting their baby.
Oh, wow. So they have children. So she's a single mother.
So I don't know. This just broke, so I don't know the details too much. But I mean, the guy in the situation is, she's probably an a-hole, but the guy is also an a-hole because there was a congressman named Madison Cawthorn. This was a guy who was kicked out of Congress for being a complete douchebag. And imagine, how big a douche you have to be to get kicked out of Congress. Well, this guy, complete douche, but also paraplegic.
Oh, wow.
And the same guy who put up this video that screwed over ABC and his ex-girlfriend, his baby mama, and caused that show to be canceled. The same guy is the driver in the car wreck that paralyzed this douchebag, Madison Cawthorn. So it's kind of a whole cluster of douches.
It sounds like a cluster of mess. By the way, it looks like Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin couldn't keep a straight face as President Donald Trump launched a rant about one of his signature complaints. So yesterday he was complaining about
windmills. I bet you it's windmills, right?
It's windmills, right?
Okay, because so apparently 20 years ago, Trump bought a golf property somewhere in the British Isles, like Ireland or some dang place, and there were these giant wind turbines. I guess that he didn't like next to the property, and
Right.
ever since he's been on a rampage against what he calls windmills.
Yeah, because he said windmills all over the country, destroying those gorgeous Scottish fields. Trump said, reiterating his longtime hatred of wind turbines, because they're actually wind turbines and everything like that. He then repeated his belief that China, by and large, is the world's largest producer and user of wind energy, doesn't use windmills. So he's claiming that they don't use windmills. Windmills which don't work, they're tremendously expensive, and the best testament is that the windmills are made in China, but China doesn't use them. I'm proudly telling you that we're going to try and have no windmills built in the United States during his tenure. So they're very bad environmentally. They kill the birds. They're unsightly. They make a lot of noise. And for some reason, the environmentalists love windmills. So apparently he doesn't like windmills, but apparently he's saying that.
Well, he's turning into the grandma who lost her self-censorship button.
Right.
You know the grandma you have, she's like 85 years old and she just says whatever she thinks to people. She'll tell her granddaughter, yeah, you're getting too fat, and you're dressing like a whore, and she used to be nice, but now she just says whatever. And Trump is turning into, he has no verbal restraint anymore.
No, and he just says whatever he feels like saying. Like he said, this whole notion of making Venezuela, after they won their baseball game against the U.S., the 51st state. So he keeps saying to think that everybody wants to be the 51st state, even though we've only got 50 states. But he's trying to campaign for the countries to be the 51st state, whether it's Canada, whether it's Greenland, now it's Venezuela, and everything like that. And I do see what you said about her facial expression, and she does have a great facial expression, as she said, who knows better about surprise, as Trump cracks a Pearl Harbor joke in front of the Japanese prime minister. So he cracked wise about Pearl Harbor during a meeting with the Japanese prime minister, Sanai Takachi. And taking questions at the White House alongside Takachi, Trump was asked about the U.S. decision to leave allies in the dark ahead of its attack on Iran. Trump said that American forces wanted to maintain the element of surprise before they're joking that Japan knew a thing or two about surprises. You don't want to signal too much. We went in very hard and we didn't want anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Trump turned to his audience laughing in an "Am I right?" aside. He's asking me, you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. He said, we had to surprise them, and we did. So that's the whole thing about Japan and the Pearl Harbor attack back in 1941.
Yeah, so I got to say that 2 months ago, I was saying, give Trump 2 months and we are going to see like gathering storm clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And to say a cliche, it's shaping up to be a perfect storm because the newest inflation number is 3.4% for February, year over year. And this is even before the war. Well, the war started, I think, on the last day of February.
Right. I think
so. That inflation number does not include gas going crazy. Gas has been going up an average of about 4 cents a day, and will continue as long as the war continues. So we are 3 or 4 days away from $4 national average for gas, then another 3.5 weeks from $5 a gallon. Inflation will be at 5% by May. The head of the Fed just said that 0 new jobs, net new jobs, have been created in the U.S. in the last year. And we're in this war that, maybe there's a 10% chance that we get lucky and the regime collapses. The Iraqis under Saddam Hussein, they collapsed 26 days into a ground war in 2003. But that required a ground war. That required a ground invasion, which we haven't done yet. And as we talked about this morning, it's much tougher to take down Iran than it was to take down Iraq because Iran has 150,000 internal police, the
Mhm.
Revolutionary Guard. Beyond that, they have 610,000 regular army soldiers. And beyond that, they have more than a third of a million reserve soldiers. So they can call up well more than a million people to fight. And a lot of them are living and working within the general population. And we saw what happened, as we discussed this morning, with Hamas living and working among the general population of Gaza. That for every Hamas person you killed one or two civilians. So any kind of, and getting to Tehran, the capital, would involve marching across 320 miles, fighting your way. That's not so dissimilar from, landing on the beach on D-Day and then having to fight your way across France into Germany.
But we got some interesting news about Iran because apparently the AP News is reporting that after Iran escalated attacks on Gulf energy sites, Israel says it will stop striking its gas fields. So they're saying that as oil prices spiral, damage to infrastructure is making it even worse. So Iran is intensifying attacks on Gulf energy sites after Israel struck its key gas field. So maybe there's going to be some pullback on some of these attacks. And I see Spain's in the news. I wish Nick was here, but there was a body of a missing American college student that was found in Spain. So it was some sad news because he was found. It was a University of Alabama student who vanished in Spain and is believed to be found at sea and everything like that. So it's the body of a missing Alabama student, Jimmy Gracie, found in Barcelona. So he's actually there, not that far from where Nick is at and everything like that. And it looks like we talked about Cesar Chavez. It looks like there's a push to strip his name off of streets, buildings, and holidays.
Right. My wife
after the sex abuse allegations.
My wife just told me that it's not going to be Cesar Chavez Day in California anymore.
Wow.
I don't know what they might call it. I don't know, Migrant Workers Day. So
they did something similar to that with Columbus Day, because remember Columbus Day had all of those issues, so then it became like Indigenous Peoples Day in a lot of celebrations and stuff like that, because people were talking about the horrible history of Columbus and everything like that. So it might be the day, Migrant Day or Spanish Day or something like that.
For not dissimilar issues,
Right.
Columbus and his people were kind of rapists and murderers, and they enslaved a bunch of people. And Cesar Chavez, I haven't seen, I'm not sure the specific allegations have been released, but apparently he was sexually abusing both adults and kids.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing as well. They are saying that a Russian oil tanker is heading to Cuba amid the U.S. economic blockade. So maybe they're going to try to help Cuba and everything like that. But they're saying that it might even be there because this was reported 19 hours ago, which would have been yesterday and everything like that. But it does look like there might be some oil coming from Russia to Cuba.
Okay. In more nonsense news.
We like nonsense news.
All right. After the Oscars, my wife and I were watching the Vanity Fair party, and we quickly turned it off because it sucked. Vanity Fair party is usually the biggest post-Oscar party, but the interviews were kind of shitty and boring and just not great. And it turns out there was just an article came out that everybody hated the party because the lighting was bad. It made everybody at past Vanity Fair Oscar parties, the lighting was very nicely done to soften people's features, which is how you want to be as a celebrity. You want to look good in photographs. Well, here they used super harsh light that made everybody look like shit, and that pissed off a lot of people. Also, I guess Domino's Pizza was a sponsor. So, it's not exactly, there was some fancier food, but anyway, I guess it was kind of a cluster F.
It sounds like a cluster F. It looks like crypto's back in the news because crypto rules have been clarified by the SEC while senators are signaling progress on market structure bills. So it looks like they are making some rules and the SEC has named Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, and 13 more crypto assets digital commodities and not securities. So I guess they're trying to decide what they are. So they declared most crypto assets not securities, including staking, airdrops, and Bitcoin mining. So I guess they are saying what you can do if you're in that space and everything like that. Because I know a lot of
So
people.
does that help crypto or hurt it? I assume it helps.
I assume it helps it because it sounds like it would give it legitimacy and everything like that. That's what I would think, but I'm not sure.
Crypto, I think, remains. There are a lot of names for it: bait and switch, rug pull, Ponzi scheme, where you come up with a coin, and you buy it when it's cheap, and then you talk it up, and pump and dump, another term. And then the suckers pile in, and then you sell your share for 100 times what you paid for it, causing the whole thing to collapse and people to lose a lot. And the Trump family is currently involved in at least 6 crypto schemes, and that's they're part of the pump and dump, where you call it a Trump coin or some other America First coin, and people know it's a Trump thing. They pile in, and Trump maybe didn't even pay money to be part of it. The creators gave him $1 million worth of coin to put his name on it, and so then Trump's stake goes up to 100 million, and then at some point Trump has to sell, and then the value drops by 98%, and all these suckers lose all their money.
Yep. The IRS, by the way, is warning Americans to beware of dangerous new scams this tax season, because tax season is coming up on us in next month and everything like that. So their experts are warning that AI is being weaponized as spam calls get more deceptive during this particular season, which is a tax season. So I've got some friends that are accountants and involved in helping people get their taxes together. So they're warning for people to be cautious, because apparently AI and other things are causing troubles in the tax game.
Yeah, they can make things sound more authentic. If you're running a scam from overseas and English is your second language, you can probably use AI to generate documents and letters that sound more official than you could come up with all by yourself. Mm-hmm. Also, if you want to run the grandma scam, AI can now synthesize loved ones' voices.
Oh, wow.
It used to be some 82-year-old lady gets a call from her daughter or from her granddaughter and says, "Grandma, I'm in jail. I hit somebody. They're saying they'll drop the charges if you can just send me $5,000. And that's the way it generally works. But now, if grandma hasn't totally lost her shit, she'll be like, "Well, you don't sound like my daughter." And at that point, maybe they hang up. Right. But now, if they can look, they can look up your daughter on social media, and they can use AI to build her voice. Mm-hmm. And now they can talk to you in the voice of a loved one. Yep. And I subscribe. My wife and I get the AARP,
the magazine. The magazine, the
magazine. It comes, right. I don't know, once a month. It kind of looks like a newspaper, but right. Yeah. And half of every issue, usually the headline on the front page, every issue is "You're getting scammed. How not to get scammed." It's so huge now, and and why old people? Because AARP is for people 50 and over. Because old people start to lose their shit, and they may not be abreast of everything, and it's easier to take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely easier to take advantage of them. By the way, I did find out that Mr. Wu will be back on World Edition tomorrow. So hopefully we'll hear more about his book as well as his views about politics. But he'll be coming at us once again from Israel. Hopefully the sirens won't go off again this time. But I did talk to one of his agents, and hopefully he'll be joining us again on the 20th.
Yeah, he seems good. He seems like like he knows what he's talking about, which made me sad, because one thing he said this morning was, "You shouldn't be in the stock market right now. It's going to drop every day and keep dropping." And Sasha agreed with him.
Mhm.
And my wife and I are watching our 401k. It's like it's on Ozempic. It started off a little fat, but now it can walk the red carpet.
It can walk the red carpet now.
Yeah, it's very skinny. It looks like our 401k looks like Demi Moore now.
Oh no, not anymore.
Yeah.
What did you think about the 90s women? I was looking at Instagram, speaking of silly news, and it was a whole list of the women of the 90s. This was from a African American site, so it was mostly women like Nia Long and Holly Berry and a number of others. But they were talking about how hot do those women look back in the day and everything, and they were thinking that some of these women of the 2000s looked more plastic and everything like that. But it was definitely praising the women of the
Okay,
90s.
I've got a bunch of things to say about that. One is it's sad when these people, the people that I thought were hot in the 90s. Now, Halle Berry has held up remarkably well.
Right.
But a lot of other people, they show up on, like I think Vivica Fox maybe shows up on a car insurance ad, to pay for maintenance in case your transmission goes out.
Right.
I already didn't like Vivica Fox because when I worked on Kimmel, she screwed over the show. She canceled. She was in the building, ready to be the main guest of the night, and she decided just to walk away, leaving the show without a guest because
How did she do that?
Because she was mad about something Jimmy had said about one of her friends.
Oh wow.
But I gotta say, like, bodies change every decade. That in the 70s, the hot people were skinny blonde ladies with no butts, Charlie's Angels, and no bra. The 70s were about little tiny boobs, so you didn't have to wear a bra. So the 70s were about nipples. The 90s were about, to some extent, about glamour. Like you had Nancy Reagan come in the 80s with the shoulder pads, the giant hair, and then that got crazy. And then the 90s, things calmed down. And then at some point in the 21st century, it became about butts, twerking, and Nicki Minaj, and having a big thick butt. So I don't know. I mean, I have something to say about that. That is, I think that white guys might be intimidated by a big butt.
You think they might be intimidated?
Yeah, because like, given what hardware white guys might be working with, it might be intimidating.
I can see that. They might be overly intimidated.
But yeah, it shifts every decade, like focuses on a different body part. The clothing reveals a different body part. Like starting in the late 70s into the 80s, it was the high cut swimsuits and the rise of thong underwear. So you had, butts made it out from under wraps. Now in concert, like people are, at least female performers are basically wearing bathing suits.
Wow.
And it's interesting. I was just talking to Scott, Canadian Corner,
right,
about, and I shouldn't talk about this but it's I looked it up because I wasn't sure, but I couldn't imagine that my parents and their whole generation ever having oral sex.
Wow.
And I looked at that. That's right. The decent people did not have oral sex. Maybe prostitutes did it in the 1930s, but married people, no, that was not a thing. That would have been considered like weird and perverted. And now 100% of people in relationships or even just dating have oral sex. And that is such a shift in behavior in a short time. And it's just surprising. When
a lot of that stuff is surprising because I understand it is even acceptable for some degree for people to take it in the backside, and that's not just gay.
Yeah, that too. That was
definitely not something that you imagined your parents or even your grandparents doing. They might have done it, but you sure didn't imagine it.
I remember watching a documentary on porn stars in the 80s, and
Mhm.
that there was a whole deal where this porn actress was so offended and walked off the set because of they wanted her to do backside. And she's like a decent person, a decent porn star would not do that. And now, yeah, it's not a thing that everybody does all the time, but yeah, it's in the mix. And
Yeah,
then
so
another change is just people not having sex at all, or having which is a Gen Z thing that people have given up on hooking up. That we've got this baby shortage, and it's just crazy how all this stuff shifts so radically, decade to decade.
yeah, it definitely shifts, and you're sitting there going like, "Why is this shifting? What's the
Well,
reason for the shifts?"
Well, we know why it's shifting for Gen Z. Gen Z is bad at the face to face. Gen Z is all about texting. And, I interact with Gen Z at the gym, and often it's hard to get a verbal response out of them. Um, like, I was a doorman in a
Right.
bar, in bars for 25 years, which means often I will hold the door, go out of my way to hold doors open for people. It's just a weird thing of mine. Also, it's good manners. And, it used to be that it was a real dick who wouldn't say thank you.
Hmm.
But now, a certain amount of the time, it's just Gen Z, and Gen Z has no idea. You use words to say stuff to people. It's if I hold the door open for Gen Z and Gen Z just kind of looks at me and walks by, I'm like, I'm a little less pissed at them than if it was Gen X who
Gen
just
X.
looked at me and walked in, because they just don't have the skills.
They don't have the skill set at all.
So I mean, I assume that Gen Z can still operate Tinder, but it does take some face-to-face communication to to try to interact with
It's
the
interesting
people
you
like
mentioned
you.
Tinder because I interviewed a Hollywood reporter yesterday. He was on the Online Dinner Party, the show that I do regularly on Wednesday, and he's interviewed everybody from Jamie Lee Curtis to a number of other folks. But he was about my age, he might be a year younger, so he's probably like 62 or 63. And he was talking about how when he was a youngster and when he was in the dating game, because I think he's now got a significant other, and I'm not sure whether he's gay or straight, doesn't really matter, but he doesn't remember there being the Tinders of the world and everything like that. So when he got back into the dating game before he found his significant other, he was talking about how it was a lot different when he got back in because there was all these apps that the young people use, whether it's Tinder, whether it's Facebook dating, but it's a number of other ones. So he was talking about the difference of the times.
Yeah, and I don't know how much verbal interaction people have. They use Tinder, they match, somebody goes over to somebody else's place, and things ensue. I don't know how much. I think it would be interesting for somebody to do a study
Right.
on how much verbal interaction Gen Z has in a sexual encounter. Like, I would guess that even when people are hooking up in Gen Z, that they're saying fewer words than previous generations.
Yeah, I would guess that would be the case. They're probably saying a whole lot less.
And I just tell myself, instead of getting pissed, I tell myself that people are just getting ready for the future when we are merged with AI. And AI is going to be the little guy on your shoulder that tells you what to do, that helps you communicate with people, and that there's this old saying, no man is an island.
Right.
That it's like it takes a village, but really we all are islands, or we're islands, because we're all locked in our brains. The only way we can let what's in our brains out to other people is to talk to them, or to do art, or to write a note. And as we merge with technology, we will become more intimately linked directly to the information of the world and to other people. And in the future, when we're all part of like this worldwide thought cloud in a
Mhm.
creepy way, it will be true that no man is an island, because we'll all be electronically plugged into everybody else.
We'll all be plugged in, you're saying?
Yeah, and for good, like that, that's good because you may not ever die because your thought patterns may be recorded in this worldwide network. So even as your brain goes offline, your identity somewhere is semi preserved in the combined thoughts of everybody else. So that's good. It's bad because the end of the privacy's already gone away. Um, and it's bad because when we're part of this herd of people all plugged in like in the matrix, it's not the people who will be in charge. It's whoever is running the frickin' matrix.
Yeah, whoever's running that matrix, and we don't know who that's going to be. It
Well, I
might be
mean, we
Trump.
know it could be frickin' billionaires.
Yep.
You say matrix, but you can think algorithm. They're kind of there's some similarities.
Yeah, I did 2 editions of the online dinner party because I had a special edition because the person was actually going to be unavailable at the regular time because that show is 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So I did it at 2 o'clock. And it's a gentleman that is all about peace and everything like that. But he was saying that he's hoping that the defense equipment will be used for space exploration, and that he was actually saying we can actually get rid of the nuclear weapons and everything along those lines. So it was a fascinating conversation with that particular gentleman, and y'all can catch that interview on Pod TV YouTube page as well as on the network itself and everything like that, because I know that they rerun those interviews constantly and everything like that. But yeah, it was just interesting. He was saying, because I was saying, well, what do we do with the equipment that's out there, the bombs and everything? He was like, well, they can be dismantled and then they can be used for space exploration and other science explorations. He's a big fan of Carl Sagan.
So yeah, but I mean, people have come up with plans in the past to build rockets that were powered by a series of nuclear explosions. You put on this like 3 foot thick plate on the back of your spaceship, and then you just set off a bunch of nukes, and it smashes the energy into the plate and just keeps pushing the rocket faster and faster, which seems like a waste. And also, but yeah, we do have more nuclear warheads in the world than we would possibly want. U.S. and Russia supposedly each have about 1,700 battle-ready warheads, which is enough to wipe out the world 100 times over.
Oh, yeah.
And with AI coming on, it's been 40 years since Terminator, and we haven't at all addressed the Skynet problem. So.
Not at all and everything. Well, this has been a fun 30 minutes. Jacoby had told me earlier he was going to come on, but I guess he got caught up in the games, and I did see that Duke won the game and everything like that. So we'll find out what's going on. And of course, we'll have Mr. Wu on tomorrow and everything like that, but we can wrap up because I got to get to Coco's show and everything.
Okay, all right. See you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Bye.